All right, we are live. Let me turn up the brightness so you guys can see me a little bit better. Let me do a sound check. Sound check on my side. Looks like we got good volume. Turn my camera a little bit more so I stay in frame. All right, guys. Close that. So right now, what we're doing is, let me get this going.
As a task. And
okay, so let's see. I forgot how to get to my live streaming things. Let's go. Let me just click it, see what happens. Video link. Get that's the main to my live stream. Close that. How do I get customization? No. Analytics? No. Copyright? Clips? Here we go. Got it. All right. So now you guys see me. All right. So now I have the chat. I should be able to just drag this over. Nope. All good. God damn it. I lost already. Doesn't matter. All right. Going back to the test. So right now we are working on my practice attempts for WGU's quantitative analysis for business C723 class. I've already kind of reviewed all the course material on my off time. So I'm prepping for the final objective assessment. For those of you that are unfamiliar with WGU, it stands for Western Governors University. It's an all online based college. I'm currently enrolled in business management. And so it's all kind of self-paced learning. So each course has a designated instructor. They got office hours, and you can see all their contact information. It's got the course overview. You got various helpful tools inside. You got your course material. So it's going to be like the main text material that all the course material is all based off of. Now, in order to essentially self-paced learn at WGU, instead of having a instructor doing like scheduled out video sessions or scheduled out assignments, you can test out whenever. It's called competency-based testing. So if you have requisite knowledge base or experience in the class, you can just essentially show that you know the material and you can test. So they give you the learning material. They show you what competencies you need to display for the test. So I need to understand for this course. I need to understand quantitative analysis methods. I need to understand quantitative analysis calculations and data interpretations, expected value, and then network analysis and linear programming and inventory models. Okay, so those are the 5 course materials that I'm going to be tested on. Okay, now I call it my practice assessment, but it's like a pre-assessment. So they do a pre-assessment that's kind of the rough based questions. You can take it as many times as you want. All you have to do is you're required to pass it once. So you can see here, attempt 2, sometime in July of this year, I passed it one time. And here's all my coaching reports. As you can see here, multiple attempts have been made within the last 8, 10, 8, 20, you can see 7, 8, and 8, 8. And today's the 9th. So you can see that I've been kind of aggressively studying this test to get ready for the final. Okay, so this final objective assessment is a proctored test. Okay, so WGU, each class you're enrolled in has 2 methods of passing the class. There's no assignments to it. It's just review the course material on your own time and test. So you have a objective assessments, which are proctored, written, multiple choice examinations. And then you have practical assessments. Practical assessments are where you have to essentially, you're given a rubric similar to what you would see in any other college class for an essay. They give you an essay rubric and you spend some time writing these essays. And so, again, it's all based off of the learning material. So that's pretty much the way. And so you have various resources at this class. So at this college, you have your homepage, your degree plan. So here's everything I've been kind of knocking out this term. So here's all my units. Here's all the classes I've done this term. And here's all my kind of completion dates of it. And then so this PPO, PPO, OPO, that's like the difference in the testing for each class. So ethics and technology, that was a essay required examination to test out. Business simulation, same thing. Applied algebra, that was a proctored exam. Okay, so that's how they label it. So each one is designated on what type of assessment you're getting. So if I applied here, business simulation, further, I've already completed this, so I can see my tests. So I was required to write 2 essays and submit. And you can see here, here's the rubric. Review through the rubric, go through all the sections and make sure your essay meets all these sections. They give you their grading criteria. So not evident, approaching competence, competence. And so section B, financial statements. So it's, if I go through the rubric and I couldn't address this specific portion of the rubric, they would, ding me for that. So this course, practical assessments, you are allowed to submit reviews or revisions. So don't think that you're gonna fail it. Once you've submitted it for review, it goes to a reviewer, and it takes about 3 to 5 days to get that submitted review back of how quickly the college kind of reads through those. You just hit a queue of every other student that's in there, and every other student's on their own kind of curriculum. So WGU doesn't operate on the kind of the standard school system. So because it's online based and it's self-paced, every student has their kind of term start point, and every month, any student can start a new term in the school. So they have mentors that kind of track their progress throughout the year. And so for me, I started sometime in, I think, November for my six-month term. I started this term, and then I've been just kind of working for the last couple months, cranking and trying to meet deadlines and pass courses. And so they have people that work with you to kind of make sure you're keeping on track with your assignments and going back to these assessments. Yeah, so what did I do? Let's see. So submissions, you can see my submission here's all my attached documents, and then here's my evaluation report. And they give me a little evaluation, and then here's how I graded on each section. So that's the reports, write-ups. Here's my homepage. Here's my mentor, how many units I've completed, my completion track for it, and how many terms I've completed it in. So this is, as you can tell, this is really short. I was self-taught a lot of this stuff, and when I started this program, I was 35 years old. So I had a lot of experience in just self-taught business stuff. So I kind of passed and breezed through a lot of stuff. And then I had prior college stuff that transferred over. So it helped me kind of streamline. And again, if you look at my degree plan, most colleges, if you go to an in-person college, I think like there's typically like a unit cap. The last time I was in an in-person college, I think the unit cap was like 18 units. So, and I did that in a summer school, and I breezed through that because I wasn't working and I was just taking care of a baby at home. They don't really do that here because you can, again, if you know the material and you can test out quickly, your mentor will work with you to make sure they can get you more stuff. So if you, as you can tell, 3, 4, 3, 3, 4, 3, I've already hit a massive unit completion. And you can look at my prior completions. So 17 units was what I carried over from other courses and other school. But my first term, I completed 27 units. That's extra 11 units, or 9 units. So 3 extra classes essentially over the standard limit that a standard college would typically allow you to do. And then my next term I did 19, and then I did 21, and then right now I'm trying to stretch and could just complete everything on 4 terms so I don't have to roll over anything over to a new semester. And so trying to crash 30 this year, this 6-month term. And so I've already completed a total of 21 units, I believe, 20. But if I go back, you can see, so here's my 20 units I've already completed, and now I just have 3 more units. And so I have, in the next 7 weeks, I have to do essentially 2 tests and one paper. Okay. And like I said, I've already been working on this one for a while. This was a rollover class from last term. And this is one of my specialties of doing quantitative analysis and stuff. And so I've just been kind of just practicing a lot with AI, coaching me through a lot of the key terms in the course material and how to formulate and work through formulas and stuff like that. This is the final capstone essay. And then I have one more test, global business environment. So 2 tests that can get done. My all-time best achievement, I think, that I really thought was cool about this course, college, was I was able to, as you can see here, 11/14/2023, 11/14/2023. So if you're capable, these were 2 tests done in one day. So I did my orientation. I did 1 class. I studied for about a month after I started, because you can see I started in October, and I didn't do my first class until November or September. I passed my first class in the end of October, and then I studied for another 2 weeks, and obviously I was working on one. Being in the military, I had fundamentals in business management, right? I've been working my entire career. Again, I started this at 35, so I was very familiar with management techniques. So I passed 1 class, was super inspired, and I was like, screw it, I'll go to human resources. And I passed the next one because I've been working and struggling on that one for like 2 weeks. So you can kind of work in classes in tandem and then just pass them all within a day or 2 ago. And so that was 7 units given to me in a single day, within a couple hours of work. So each test took me about an hour to go through, so hour and a half. So within 3 hours I had 7 units of stuff I was already familiar with. So that's the kind of cool part about this program. If you're a student or you're older and you just want to fast track your college pipeline, try out online, try out WGU. Don't waste your time going to in-person stuff. If you just know what you want, you know what your degree you want to get. You know why you're going to attain it. You know why you're trying to get certified in it or something for whatever legal reasons you need to. This may be a nice, fantastic way for you to save money and just streamline your course. Like I said, I've been managed to compress a standard 4-year curriculum and compress it down to 2. It's taken a lot of work, a lot of focus, and a lot of kind of reverse engineering of all the systems and processes and like really compressing my education pipeline. But that's what I'm showing you here is what I did. So let's get to the course. So we're over here. Close out that one. All right, so we're just working on the assessment, right? I've already reviewed a lot of the material. I got 57 left. All right, so question 15. The histogram below represents the approximate weight in kilograms of bags scanned in the check-in counter of a flight on Thanksgiving Day. The histogram is just a standard table. How many bags were scanned? Okay. So we're looking for a total. How many? The question is how many bags were scanned? It's a simple total. So here on the y-axis of this gram, we have the frequency count, so the individual count, and then this is the x-axis. We have looking at the chart, we have the weight ranges. So here's a weight range, here's another weight range, another one. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weight ranges. And so all we have to do is total it. And for this testament, this one's a simple, easy thing. I'm allowed to use my calculator. So to answer this one, I gotta go 4 plus, I wish I had light. I'm gonna turn on some light. No, that doesn't do shit. All right, 4 plus 14 plus 16 plus 20 plus another 16 plus looks like 10. Might be 10. It's hard to see over here. All right, so that's 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. Yeah. So 10 equals a total of 80 bags. So for the entire measured time that they measured on Thanksgiving at all the different separate weight ranges, they measured 18 bags that day, or 80 bags that day based off the calculator. All right, so what we're gonna do is instead of doing everything sequentially, I like to make sure that even though I have like a limited time, this practice assessment is 54 questions, excuse me. I want to make sure I cover all the competencies, so I kind of randomize it. So that's why you see 1, 9, 13, 15, 17. So we'll go and jump back to 3. All right, to read this question. This question reads, as a local music store that hosts live music has been a very popular hangout for years. However, the owner is concerned that the increasing popularity of new methods of music to deliver will soon make the business obsolete. The owner is considering building a small recording studio in the basement of the store. The nearest professional studio is 50 miles away, so a new studio may appeal to local musicians and increase foot traffic. The owner has all the costs of the building and the studio and has also estimated how much revenue might increase due to the new studio, from studio rental fees, increased food and drink sales if more people come to live music shows, etc. The owner will use this information to determine the net present value of the studio. Which method of analysis should the owner use to make a determination? So that's a lot of context of what's going on in this scenario. Okay, so this just pretty much laid out. There's a music studio or music store, and he's looking to increase, considering a small recording studio in the basement of the store. Okay, he's already kind of figured out his revenue in rental fees for doing things. Okay, so which method of analysis would this owner use to make this determination? So A is qualitative, B is decision tree, C is expert judgment, and D is quantitative analysis. So those are different ways of doing analysis in this context. Qualitative analysis is kind of the subjective analysis. It's like determining if you think a room or a picture is pretty. So if I see a picture or if I qualitative analysis, like when you see reviews of your movies online and stuff, you're like, one reviewer says it's great, another one says it's dog shit, right? You're like, well, which one is it? You're like, well, it's based off of the subjective opinion of the human being. So that's what qualitative is it's just the objective opinion. What makes a good product for a human is not what we say it's making a good quality product. Like, well, what does that mean? It means something different to everyone. Okay. So I don't think in this scenario, what I read off for this owner, he's doing qualitative metrics because he has an idea and he's already kind of broken down numbers, and particularly he's focused on revenue. Right, the owner has all the costs of the building, the studio, and has also estimated how much revenue might increase due to the new studio. Okay, so that key insight right there kind of gets us away from doing a subjective opinion of whether this is a good investment for him. A decision tree is a something different. Decision tree from the text material is kind of like a way of like, I have multiple options here. He hasn't really laid out multiple options for us. So like, let's say you're in the market for a new car, whoever's watching this, and you're like, well, do I get the Honda Pilot or do I get the Ford Explorer? Well, you have different needs. Okay. Well, and then if you wanted to, you can lay out all the different options for you and lay out different quantitative measures and qualitative measures, and then make a decision estimation. And what that would do is essentially distill, okay, I have multiple products. I can distill it down to both qualitative measures and quantitative measures, and then I can rank and filter them. And that will help me create a judgment on what is a good option for me and my needs. Okay, so that would be a decision tree. Expert judgment would just be like, you know what? The group of people here, I think we're hosting a party. There's like 20 people here. I think everyone wants tacos. Yeah, I'm digging tacos right now, so we're just gonna go get tacos instead of asking everyone that what they're craving. Okay, so I'm hosting the party. It's my party, and I say what goes. Okay, so that's the best analogy I can say with coming up with an expert judgment. So if this scenario highlight, which it doesn't, some kind of terminology saying, hey, he's just going to do something because he feels like it would be profitable from his better judgment of how well he knows, the market or something, and doesn't give any other context aside from that, that would be an expert judgment. So I'm going to lean into answering this question as that saying it's D, quantitative. And what quantitative is essentially, if you have qualitative, which is subjective opinion, quantitative is now the mathematical application of making a decision. Instead of getting out of the subjectivity or the expert decision or decision tree logic, you're saying, I went with this because the numbers make sense. So a lot of people might change jobs. Well, why did you change jobs? A lot of people would be like, well, because it paid me more. Duh. So that's a quantitative analysis on why you chose to go that route with your career in that kind of decision. So if that comes something that pops to mind, you're like, well, I chose to leave my job because they weren't paying me enough. That money cost thing, you're comparing jobs or job categories based off of a finite, trackable, numberistic kind of methodology. That's a quantitative analysis. So that's what this guy did. He was tracking his fees and he's tracking his revenue. So he did quantitative analysis. All right. What am I doing?
What are you doing?
Studying and talking. All right, I'm back. All right, let's jump around randomly. 29. All right. The PERT chart for a project is shown below. So PERT chart. I have no idea what this stands for. PERT. So do not. Typically when I take tests, a lot of times what I do is I just kind of skip a lot of the crazy root memorization of terms, and I just kind of get to the what's necessary for solving the problems given. Okay, so I go right to here. So here's a chart. The easiest way to think of this is like a network diagram. Okay, so we have various contexts of things. A, duration, 25 days. So what appears to be going on here is something that is labeled with the variable A has a time duration of 25 days. And then there's this arrow saying, okay, so A, B, so A leads to B, and then B leads to J. Okay, so this seems like something to me would be like kind of a very simplistic way of defining a kind of a project. If this was a home project, this might be laying your foundation, framing, and roofing kind of thing. All right, and then like laying foundation is like you have to do foundation work before you do roofing work, something like that. So they all relate on each other, and so these may be different kind of branches of that project. All right, so what is the critical path? Okay, so what is the critical path? The critical path for a project is essentially like the branch that is the longest. So essentially we got to calculate all the individual branches. So is it HIJ, ABJ, EGJ, CDFJ, or EFJ? And so here's my options and all the different ones. And then I can calculate it. So this is a simple calculator equation. Again, so A is HIJ, so HIJ, so 15 plus 12 plus 5 is a total of 32. ABJ, so we have 32. 25 plus 9 plus 5 equals 39. So ABJ is bigger. What I can do to simplify the speed of this is EGJ is minus 8 minus 16 and then minus 5. And what's left over? 10. So BGJ is larger because I have a 10 carryover. So 39 minus 10 minus 9 minus 13 minus 5 equals 2. So ABJ is still bigger. And then EFJ, 8 plus 13 plus 5 is 26. So ABJ is the biggest one. And that's critical path. Let's jump to question 36. Question 36 has no business context from here. I'm just given a table. I have rows with activities labeled A through E. I have various fields and columns. So field A is activities. B is normal time of day in days. C is normal cost. D is crash time. E is crash cost. And then F is the maximum time reduction. So if you look at this, activity A, its normal time duration it takes for whatever it is it's doing. It takes 7 days to complete, and they charge $7,000. So if this was some kind of builder, it would take 7 days and they'd charge you $10,000. Crash time is if you want, think of it like essentially paying for overtime or bringing in more people. So for this activity, they're crashing it to 5 days completion, and then they're charging an extra $16,000 or $6,000 from A to B. So there's two different activities: the normal time frame, normal time, normal cost; crash time, speeding it up, and paying more. Okay, and then this column essentially is labeling the time savings for each individual activity. Okay, so if you look at 35 and 25, it is a 10-day difference. 7 minus 5 is 2 days. Makes sense? Based on the above chart, what is the maximum benefit for crashing both C and D? So we need to add C and D together, and we're looking for the benefit, the max benefit of crashing both. So C and D here. Stop that. C and D here. We don't care about normal. We can just scoot past all this. This is irrelevant data. We just need to identify C and D and how much time we're saving in between if we combine them. So 6 plus 8, which is on the rough end, 14 days. So A is 8 days. B is project time will be reduced by 2 days. C is 35 days, and D is 14. And what did I say? 14? All right, let's do 23. Oh, I don't want to read through that. No, I don't want to do that one anymore. All right, so remember how I said decision tree? This is essentially a diagram of a decision tree for anyone that's watching and following along. You have a person that has to make a decision on something. They have multiple options. Here's the cost of the sub options. And what they're labeling here is probability. So the likelihood of the probability of that. And then this is a unit of measure of how they're evaluating this whole branch. So it looks like, let's read the question. 27. Employee has been asked to decide which machine to choose from 4 possibilities. The purchase and installation cost for each machine is identical. So each machine's purchase cost and installation is identical. So they're all the same. The decision tree below describes the conditions and expected values. Okay, so this is essentially the expected outputs of the machines. So if we're looking at 2 branches, it looks like they're calculating the high end productivity of the machine and then the low end productivity of the machine. So if looking at this branch right here, which machine to purchase, machine A has a high productivity limit of $100,000 and a low productivity limit of $50,000. And then they've labeled the probability or likelihood that market on a day-to-day or a annual basis would be that. So out of 100% of the optionality, so they sliced these 2 options and they weighed it essentially. Which one, if they're, why they set up probability? Okay, so they're pulling out options. You only have 2 options. You have the upper limit or the lower limit. You have to pick what's the statistical average that it'll weigh to one side or the other, and they've quantified it. So it has a 25% probability and then a 75% probability of being on the lower limit. And so what I think they did was they multiplied 0.25 times 100,000. So 100,000 times 0.25 gives me 25K. And then 50,000 times 0.75 is 75. And then so I add 25,000 on top of that, and that gives me 62500 on my calculator, and that's exactly what I got here, 62500 for the measurement. So this measurement is the combined total. So they multiplied the probability times the expected output, and I have no idea why they probably would do that. Probably because they just want to they want to weigh it down. So if you have a 25% chance of drawing out the number, you're only going to get really 25% of the value of the upper limit. So that's why they and then they added them together. So really the combined total of the whole probability is 62,000 for this one machine. And they've done that for multiples. So they've figured out this machine's high limit, low limit, high limit, low limit, high limit, low limit. And so they've did it, and then they've identified probabilities for each machine's likelihood it's gonna be that productive. And then so you do all that, and they've established these metrics right here: 62,500, 50,000, 35,000, and 25,000. And so now the question is, which machine should the employee select? Well, if I was an employee and I wanted to be good with my boss in the business I hired at, I would probably pick something that makes the most money, I would assume. So looking at machine A, I think from this whole assessment would be the likely. I don't think picking a failing machine would be the best one. So D would be out because it's the lowest. The more profitable I make my boss and my owner, I think, and make the business as a whole, I think the more likely I'm going to keep employed. So that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. So we'll go with machine A. Let's go. Let's go to 54. Ooh, I don't want to explain math for here. Don't want to explain that one. All right, here's another one. Another table, another normal cost, crash costs, time reduction, almost the same chart, it looks like. Based on the above chart, what would be the maximum benefit for the project manager crashing activity D? So the project manager wants to crash just this one activity, D, and it looks like they save 8 days. And it costs an extra $8,000. Okay, so the project time will be reduced by 8 days. Yep. The cost of the project will decrease by $8,000. That's a negative. It actually goes up. The cost of the project will decrease by $33,000. No, that's not what that means. It will actually increase by $8,000. And then the project time will be reduced by 20 days. Again, there is a 20 here, but that is the time frame that activity takes. So the only true statement in that, and that's what I typically distill a lot of things down to. A lot of questions will distill down to, you got to think of things binary sometimes when it comes to testing. Think of it like laying out a variable. If x equals 5 and y equals 3, okay, 5 plus 3 equals 7, and you're like, no, that's not how that maths. That's a false statement. 5 plus 3 is 8, if my math checks out right. So you're essentially trying to identify true false statements. Okay, so project time will be reduced by 20 days. Negative, only 8. So these ones both kind of talk about reduced. We could look at the decreased in value, right? But because the normal cost and the crash cost, you actually went up. You spent more money. So these two are false statements, and you don't even have to care about the variables. The fact that it says project costs will decrease, This is the main part of where the falsity of that statement comes from, is that no, we actually increased in value. Okay, so if this said increased right here, both these would be true booleans in computer logic, but it says increase, so it's a false. All right, review the graphs below. All right, so I have graph A, B, C, and D. Graph A is months, random numbers, kind of sequential, looks like cyclical numbers. Graph B looks like downtrended numbers. If not knowing what these numbers represent, but let's say they're financial numbers. And let's say this is months, so this would be financial earnings. We can hypothetically say we see a downward trend over these course of months. C represents, if same hypothetical, right? We're looking at these variables, since this represents time, not knowing what these represents, we are seeing an increase in trend, whether that's an increase in inventory or increase in financial. This vector right here on the graph isn't labeled, so we don't know necessarily what it means, but we're seeing from time relation that there is an increase in time. So January's not knowing what each individual of these things is or how much it is. This could be product quantities being manufactured. This could be business revenue. This could be anything, but over time we see increase. Graph D looks very cyclical in nature again. What I mean by cyclical is it goes low, high, low, high, low, high. And notice how the even trends, the even caps, okay? So this cycling through, there's a sine wave. I can draw an arc through here, touching. So it's oscillating, which causes what's called cyclicality. Okay, again, not knowing what's measured. Okay, which graph represents inventory levels based on receipt of orders of 500 units monthly at a demand of 100 pieces per month? Okay, which graph represents inventory levels based on receipt of orders, 500 units monthly, and a demand of 1,000 pieces per month? Okay, so the company is ordering only 500, but the business demands 1,000. So if we added those, we'll essentially subtract them. 500 minus 1,000 is negative 500. Okay, so we have a negative 500 carryover. We have at a loss. The demand of the sales still wants more from us. Okay, so which of these graphs represents a negative carryover from month to month? And I think this would be graph B. Okay, so each month we're in the negative in demand of our sales. So B. I don't want to swamp your guys' brain with math. That's why I'm trying to bounce around some different stuff. All right, so same table before, actually similar, same table for a project. Got activities, normal time, normal costs, crash time, crash cost, time savings. Obviously different inputs, variable inputs into the table. Table below shows a project's activities A through E, their normal and crash durations for their normal activities. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. What is the benefit for crashing activity A? Okay, so just this one. So we have a normal time and a crash time. So 10 to 7. So it looks like we go down 3 days. And then normal cost is $10,000 and we spent an extra $6,000. Okay. So when it says what is a benefit, typically a benefit is not spending more money. Okay. So we shouldn't look for answers that say, hey, we're going to spend more money. Okay. We're going, a benefit to us paying for stuff is typically going to get extra value. So what kind of extra value can we measure off of this? It would be time. So 10 to 7 days. So the 3 days savings. So A is cost reduction of up to $16,000. There's no cost reduction here. Okay. Again, cost reduction of up to $6,000. There's no reduction. You're paying more. So both A and B are false statements. Time reduction of up to 3 days. C looks pretty good, but let's finish D. Time reduction, cool. We're almost there, up to 7 days. Negative. 7 is the crash time, but it's not the reduction. You're going from 10 to 7 instead, so you're losing 3 days. So reduction of up to 3 days would be C. These ones are kind of cool. I mean, they're kind of mathy, but they're not. You're not really solving anything. All right. Question 39. A textile company produces tablecloths and cloth napkins. The production process includes 2 steps: cutting and sewing. Every day, at least 2 production hours must be worked in the cutting department, and 6 production hours must be worked in the sewing department. So it's split. We have an 8-hour day split between 2 activities: cutting and sewing. 6 goes to cutting. No, 2 goes to cutting and 6 goes to sewing. The time needed for cutting and sewing each item, as well as production costs for each item, are provided in the table below. Okay, so we have product separated by item, time needed to cut. It takes 8 minutes for a tablecloth, time needed to sew, 9 minutes per tablecloth, and the production cost for the total of a tablecloth is $9.50. So the production cost is the total it takes for the company to manufacture, $9 per tablecloth that they develop. So in order to make a profit, they'd have to sell more than that, at a higher cost to them, for the buyer on the inside. Cloth is the same thing. It takes a minute and a half to sew the whole napkin. It takes 6 minutes. Oh no, excuse me, a minute and a half to cut the napkin. 6 minutes to sew each napkin, with a total cost of $3.50 for a total cost per napkin. All right, so now we got all that information and data from the context and the table. Let X1 represent the number of tablecloths. So that's just essentially a statement saying we're applying this variable. X1 is now tablecloths. So X1 equals tablecloths to be produced, and let X2 represent the number of cloth napkins to be produced. So X1 and X2 are different variable inputs, and so one's a napkin and one is tablecloths, and essentially it is the total in a represented value, okay, for the day. So X1 can equal any number of things depending on what you can produce, but it's being paired with tablecloths. What is the equation of the objective function Z that optimizes the production cost? So that let's break that down for a viewer who's trying to kind of learn about this different stuff for mathematical stuff. All right, so what is the equation? So we're looking for a formula. So we have various formulas, okay, of the objective function. The objective function, I think here, okay, an objective function is kind of the end goal. So we want an equation, but we want an end goal as well. Z, we're going to label it Z, that optimizes the production cost. So if I was a What does that mean to a layman who doesn't know kind of business savvy stuff? So an optimization is typically a time saving function or cost saving function or amount of people saving function. So optimizing is typically a reduction of something in the business sense. Okay, whether that's good or bad, it's not the key. Typically, when you're optimizing, you're making things a little bit more fluid. Okay, so if I was a student and I was optimizing my study time, it would be the thing of like, instead of spending hours and hours and hours, I would review my notes because that helps me optimize my study time. Okay, so it's essentially the correlation of saving the time in that theory. So what is an equation that says optimizes for production cost? Okay, so we're looking essentially for the lowest production cost for the whole thing. So we're trying to create an equation that reads as the lowest production cost. So what would be the lowest production cost? Well, you have two variables here, 9.5 and 3.5. And you need to apply them to the variables here. So in a day, what number of units of things would be the lowest cost? So it'd be literally the minimum. Okay, so we don't have to worry about max. Maximizing z would be, I don't remember what max z would represent. But if we're optimizing, we're trying to minimize z. So that's what that means, minimize z. So z equals the total, okay? And as you can see, these, I forgot what these were, coefficients before each variable. 19, don't know what that means. That's not on the table. And 13.5, don't know what that means. That's not any context in the table. So we can say that doesn't mean anything to me. So I don't know. I don't think that one's that one. 17, 7.5, again, no context. Min z, 9.5, we have a 9.5 here. And then a 3.5, we have a 3.5 here. Okay. So 9.5 of x1 tablecloths, that's the total cost. So for every x produced, so let's say 1, 9.5 times 1 would be 9.5. 9.5 times 2 would be $19. Okay, so we can start plugging in the amount of tablecloths, and this whole factor would give us the total of what the total production cost would be for the minimal total. And so that's how I would break down this question. So I would go D. Make sense? All right. I know if that explanation didn't make sense to viewers, and it's okay. I've been kind of studying this on the side without recording it. Hopefully this has been informative for you guys. I'm going to close out the stream right now. Please like and subscribe the channel. Check out some of my other live streams. I usually live stream my random experiments with AI. Today I didn't really use ChatGPT for anything. I now have it queued up right here. I've been using a lot for studying. Here's my whole kind of study sessions, educating me. If you're curious about how to do this, essentially the easiest way to do it, let's say I needed help for this question. For a viewer, here's a new chat. And I can say, hey, I'm studying. I need your help. I'm going to give you a question and a screenshot of the table information. I need you to coach me through and helping me. Okay. As you can tell, I didn't type anything. I use WhisperFlow for transcribing my voice to text. For study aid, all you have to do is hit this plus. Instead of going to deep research, agent mode, or other sources, you can just go to more and you study and learn. And this will turn on the coaching kind of functionality. And then so now, when I give it, I like to put parentheses for giving it contextual stuff. That's just my kind of signature of doing it. You could do it rough and ChatGPT still understands it. But when I read through it, that's how I separate visually contextual blocks of information versus what I'm trying to query stuff. So now in the parentheses, I'll typically drop in the context of something else. So here's the context. Paste it here. Doesn't look like I have a table, so I can add a table. We can go ahead and let's do this. Screenshot this table. Okay. There we go. Now ChatGPT can read images, so giving it screenshots of what you're looking at is helpful. And when I hit send, it should read through after. Instead of looking online or answering the chat directly, it's going to look at the question and it's going to give me kind of a study aid help of what it sees between all the context. So I didn't give it the full question. Obviously, it was cut out, but this image helps it see the table contextual information. And then I have the information I gave it of the copy and paste scrubbing, so all the answers. And then I have it the little bit of what I would like it to do. And so right now it's working through it and it failed. Let's rerun this. Okay, so then here it is. So I wasn't new to answering this question, but here's a step. Step one, identify what the objective function represents. You were told the production costs for each item are provided in the table. Okay, the question asks the equation. So since we're dealing with costs, do we want to minimize or maximize? So that's what max is. Do we want to maximize the cost or minimize the costs?